15 years, our knowledge of Mars has again gone through a gigantic expansion. And it is because of the work that we do here. If you ever need to have a feeling that you're taking part in something that's important, just say to yourself or to your friends, 99.99% of everything the human species knows about Mars is because of what we have done here. That's a pretty proud statement to make. So, what has curiosity done? Okay, quick summary. Dangerous to make quick summaries of scientific information, but I'll give you. Number one, they have discovered that at one time, a long time ago, in the place in Gale Carrier where we landed, the area was habitable. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that life was there, that they found life? No. It means that if you could take the right kind of earth bug and put it there, it wouldn't die. That omits all sorts of things about how you get to that point in the first place. The second thing that they have discovered, which I believe will be one of the major technical discoveries, scientific discoveries we've ever made, is that there is, at least in any of the places that we have been, no methane. Now, for those of you who don't know or care why that's important, Earth-based observations have seen what they thought was methane on Mars, and as a result of that, have been, since methane exists on the Earth primarily of biological origin, and if you don't understand its biological origin, you can go out and have a few giggles, but nevertheless, if you were an extraterrestrial and you were looking at the planet Earth, you would know there was some process going on in the atmosphere all the time that was putting unstable gases into the atmosphere, and the atmosphere was at disequilibrium, and therefore there was something going on the surface. So the discovery that there's been no methane in the places that we have looked is a life-negative concept if you are an Earth chauvinist. That's a term that was coined by Josh Lederberg. On Viking, I had 2 Nobel Prize winners. He was one of them, and 4 who closeted me for at least an hour explaining why they should have won the Nobel Prize. And anyway, Josh said, you have to be careful in this business that you're not an Earth chauvinist or a thermal chauvinist. Now, what's a thermal chauvinist? It's all sorts of organics on Titan, all right? And a thermal chauvinist is that chemistry that takes forever. It's not going to happen. There can't be life there. We have to be very careful about that sort of thing. Now, I was going to tell you also about the moving into Category 3. Of the things that we have done here at JPL, in the history books 400 years from now, 2 will stand out. Our exploration of Mars, I've talked about at great length. The other one is the management of Project Kepler, which has now discovered that we know for sure, it's just announced a new number that last week, of the existence of 3,500 other planets in orbit around other stars. And now you can feel the pull, because some of these are Earth-like, where water might be liquid. And in the 50 years that come from now to the future, what will happen is we will be looking for a place that is like the Earth and asking some fundamental questions at a very high level. Is there life there? If so, what's it like? If not, why not? And of course, is this a place that human beings could live? And all these things are done from the work of the engineering, the mission assurance, and everything that we do here. It's easy to forget them. But sometimes we have to think about what it is we do with the mind of a young person. Somebody not yet blasé and gotten used to things that are sort of mundane. As I told you, I have 8 sons. It's been a great experience for me, the most humanizing experience of my life, needless to say. I now have one who's 4.5. As you probably figured out, I'm really, really old, so having a 4.5-year-old child at my age is quite an experience by itself. But they teach me things with great regularity. Let me give you an example. My son, about 15, 20 years ago, my son was at school, and he had one line to write down, "What does your father do?" And he brought it home for me to look at to see whether or not I would agree with it. See how the tears in my eyes? I'm sorry, it's just the way I am. One line, "My father adds to human knowledge." Can you have a better life? Can you do anything that is worth more than that? And now, I'll tell you about taking my son, Robert, wanted to see the Milky Way. All right, so I did my research. Where can you see the Milky Way without, an aid? So Hovenweep National Monument was right at the top. All of you have ever been to Hovenweep or even know where it is? Raise your hand. It is the third least visited national monument in the whole system. It's in the Four Corners area where Colorado and Utah and New Mexico and Arizona come together. And what's nice about it is there are no towns anywhere nearby. And so you get up to 7,000, 8,000 feet, you put your sleeping bag down on the ground, and you look up at the sky, and there is a bell. It's the threads of the Milky Way spread out against the sky like a brilliant painter has painted for you. And here I am with Robert, and I'm lying there. He says to me, Dad, why do I feel so close to the stars? And I said, Robert, you feel close to the stars because the stars are your parents. He rolled his head over on the sleeping bag and he looked at me and said, Dad, you and Mom are my parents. What's this business about the stars? I could detect a little skepticism. He was 15 at the time, as 15-year-olds are. So I remembered he had just finished his chemistry class. And I said, son, how does oxygen get to the tissues in the human body? He looked at me with a strange look on his face and he said, it's done by hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the molecule that carries oxygen to tissues. Good, I said, and what is the single atom, the center of hemoglobin, that makes this all possible? He says, iron. Good for you, Robert. I said, and how do you think iron gets into the human body in the first place? And he got that smiley like a grin on his face and he said, geritol, spinach, lots of different ways that they happen. And so I said, all right, but how do you think it gets into spinach and geritol? And he looked over at me and he said, Dad, I suspect you're going to tell me a story now, but can you make it sort of short? Because I'm not really on the tired side. So I put my head up on my shoulder and I looked at him and I said, once upon a time. Now, in my family, that's very, very important. Because before I started writing all my novels, even during that time too, I would get all my boys together in the evening and I would just make up stories. And I would always start them with once upon a time and off we would go. Sometimes I would read from the novels I was writing, but whatever it was always starting with once upon a time. I said, once upon a time, Robert, there was nothing here in the universe. And then all of a sudden, there was an event that we call the Big Bang, and none of us really understand why it occurred. And after that moment, there were hydrogen, helium, some subatomic particles. Now it's all in one. For millions and millions of years. And after a certain period of time, following the laws of physics, galaxies formed, and stars in those galaxies, which were a certain size, would die, live and die. When they would die, in their death throes, which is called the supernova explosion, they would mold protons and neutrons into higher order elements on the chemical chart. So after one supernova explosion, instead of just hydrogen and helium, you now had carbon and oxygen and nitrogen. And that stuff was blown across the universe to some other place. And some other stars started forming, and some other solar systems started forming. And in the second one, as the star died, it still added protons and neutrons and made higher order elements on the chart. And these became the star stuff of which we are made. Iron, manganese, potassium, all the higher order elements of the periodic chart. It took 2 generations of stars. Remember, it was a third of the way before there was even the Milky Way, and another third of the way before there was the solar system. It took 2 generations of stars in their death throes to make the stuff out of which you and I are made. Now, whatever your belief system is, I assert there is no greater miracle than the fact that we are chemicals risen to consciousness, forged in the death throes of stars, and that we are able to look around us and ask questions about where we came from and where we are going. And you and I have the privilege of building the machines and instrumenting them to go out and ask these questions and answer them.